Leaders' questions. I call on Deputy Robert Troy on behalf of Fianna Fáil.
Thank you, Concordia. Tánaiste, the reports of how and why the Garda removed 2 children from their families in Tallaght and Athlone are very disturbing on a number of levels. The fact that the children have been returned to their families has to be welcomed, and we must acknowledge the extreme distress the families went through over the last few days. While the Gardaí acted in good faith under Section 12 of the 1991 Childcare Act, which states, where a Garda has a reasonable grounds for believing that there is an immediate and serious risk to the health and welfare of a child. Following the press coverage of a child in Greece, there was obviously an increased number of anonymous calls to the Garda, which were concentrated on Roma families. Questions need to be answered why actions were taken, in particular on this minority group. Let's be totally honest here, Tánaiste. Would these extreme actions be acceptable if the families involved were Irish nationals? Children should only be removed in extreme circumstances, and normally applications are made, private hearings take place. This did not happen in this case, and we need to know why. There were over 9,000 such applications last year alone, but as hearings are held in private, there was little media coverage. Minister Shatter has requested an internal report from the Garda Commissioner so that lessons can be learned, and Minister Fitzgerald is also doing an independent report of these cases. Tánaiste, if there were genuine and legitimate concerns by the Gardaí, serious questions need to be answered. Why were the other children left with the families, and why was it that one of the parents could not have stayed with the children while the DNA tests were being done?
Thank you.
Why is it that the HSE was not asked to make an assessment on the families prior to the removal of the children from their homes?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Concordia, well, first of all, I agree with Deputy Troy that the removal of the children from these 2 families, the reports that we've heard of this, are very disturbing at a number of levels. Secondly, I join with him in welcoming the fact that the children have been returned to the families, and I acknowledge, as he has, the distress that this has caused, no doubt to the children first of all, but also to the families concerned, and I acknowledge that Deputy Troy accepts the Gardaí acted in good faith in the matter. I think the first thing here is that nobody should jump to conclusions. I think it's the first lesson that needs to be learned from this. I think that what we need to establish are the facts and indeed the answers to the questions that Deputy Troy has raised. That's why the Minister for Justice has asked the Garda Commissioner to prepare a report on these 2 cases, and why the Minister for Children has asked the HSE to prepare a report, and both of those reports will go to the Children's Ombudsman, Emily Logan, and I think we should see that played through. Certainly what's in my mind about this is, first of all, when these, I'd like to know the nature of the complaints or information that was given to the Gardaí, which gave rise in the first place to the visit to the family homes, how that was interrogated. And then I think the issue that then arises is the question of the immediate and serious risk to the health and welfare of the children, which are the circumstances where a child may be removed from a family setting. I'd like to know what was the immediate and serious threat to their health or safety, which was considered to justify their removal from their family. I'd like to know how the decision was made, and by whom it was made, and I'd like also to know, if there were other ways of dealing with whatever the issue was that confronted the Gardaí at the time, short of the children being removed from their home and from the family setting. I think these are all questions that the investigations and the reports that Minister Shatter and Minister Fitzgerald have asked for will have to address. I don't think any of us should prejudge what the answers to those are going to be, but I do think that we need to get those answers and the information and the reports placed in the hands of the Children's Ombudsman.
Thank you. Deputy Troy, 1 minute. Thank you.
Tánaiste, thank you for your reply. We can't go back to the days of see no evil, hear no evil and speak no evil. We all have a responsibility, and we do not need to see these cases being used as a deterrent to protecting children. At the same time, we have to prevent over-intrusion in family lives. A right balance has to be achieved. But one lesson that can be learned is that the government needs to publish the legislation which will allow for proper procedures and protocols for dealing with child protection issues. This was promised over 2 years ago. The professionals working in the health service, in child protection, as well as the Gardaí, are operating in a legislative vacuum, and we need the Children First guidelines put on a legislative basis to back up in law. As I said, this legislation is overdue. It was promised over 2 years ago, and is an essential part of ensuring that we have a robust child protection issue. So can I ask, can the Tánaiste give a clear time frame as to when that legislation will come before the House? And can I also ask, in relation to the reports that are being carried out, can you confirm why the Garda report is internal and not independent? And can you confirm when the reports are concluded, will they be given to the families concerned as well as the Ombudsman?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, the legislation we expect will be published this session, and as you know, Minister Fitzgerald has been bringing forward the guidelines and the legislation. Secondly, I think it's important to recognise that this isn't, I think, an issue of legislation. This is an issue of practice, and I think that what has to be, I think, addressed here is, what actually happens in practice. We could have all the legislation, all the guidelines in the world. It's already established the circumstances. It's already established the circumstances. It's already established the circumstances in which the Gardaí may intervene in a family situation and where children are removed for their own safety. Now, the question that arises is, what happened in this case, and we have to establish what those facts will be. The intention is that those reports be prepared over the next 2 to 3 weeks. They'll be given to the Children's Ombudsman. The Children's Ombudsman will liaise with the families in relation to the reports. I think the dimension which you raised earlier, which is the question of whether any group of people in our country, whether it is people of a particular ethnic background or any other group of people, clearly should not be given extra or special attention in respect of child safety matters, and I would be very concerned if there were any element of that in these cases. But that's something clearly that the reports that will be prepared will have to address.
Thank you. Deputy McDonald.
Ceann Comhairle. And Tánaiste, no more than you, I don't wish to jump to conclusions in respect of this case. I don't believe that we should, and I don't believe that it would be helpful. I'm sure none of us can, or perhaps we can, imagine the scene, the knock at the door that those families got, the children taken away. It seems on the simple basis, from what we can ascertain, that their complexion or colouring didn't fit the racial profile of the families concerned. There's a number of core and deeply troubling issues arising from these cases and what's already in the public domain. The first is that issue of the possibility of racial profiling and targeting of Roma families in this case from prejudice or fear or suspicion. And we need very, very clear statements today from this House and from you, Tánaiste, on behalf of government, that no family and no child will be discriminated against or targeted in any way on the basis of their race, their ethnicity, the colour of their skin, their eye colour, their hair colour. The second issue that arises is the issue of the state itself and its capacity to protect the rights of children. And I know a lot of people watching this story see the marked contrast, on the one hand, between the Children's Ombudsman last week revealing the failure of the HSE to intervene over several years after a child made multiple allegations of rape, or another report revealing that 4,100 children who were assessed by the HSE as needing intervention had to wait more than 3 months for that intervention. So people see that on the one hand, and then they see the heavy arm of the state on the other in these cases. And this is troubling, Tánaiste, because I do not wish to see these cases undermine the capacity of this state to protect our children. I think it is fundamental that we can do that.
Thank you.
But I also know that there is now big public disquiet, because the question is, well, can the state move in willy-nilly and in an arbitrary fashion and take people's children from them? I want you to state categorically here this morning that that is not the case. And the third issue, very quickly, Ceann Comhairle, that I want to put to you is the nature of the investigations that you propose. In these cases, I don't think it is satisfactory that the Gardaí investigate the Gardaí, or for that matter, that the HSE investigates the HSE. I think it would be far better for the inquiry from the outset to be absolutely independent.
Thank you.
And perhaps at the outset under the auspices of the Ombudsman, Emily Logan.
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, there are three issues that Deputy McDonald has raised. The first is you've asked me for a categoric statement in respect of discrimination against any family or any child on the basis of their ethnic background or any other background. And let's be very clear about this. Every child in this country and every family in this country, irrespective of their ethnic background, their religious background, any other background, enjoy the same rights. There can be no discrimination, there can be no targeting, there can be no kind of special attention or special treatment. People in this country, irrespective of their background, have the right to be treated equally. That, I think, is the position clearly of the government, and I believe is the position of everybody who sits in this House. The second issue is in relation to the question of reporting. Now, you're absolutely right, Deputy McDonald. We've had a culture in this country of abuse of children not being reported. In some cases, people who are aware of the abuse of children not reporting it for a very long time. Happily, I think we are seeing an end to that culture. We need to have a regime in respect, and we have a regime in respect of the protection of children which puts children first and their safety first. But we also have to ensure that the way in which that is delivered and the way in which that is managed and the way in which that is operated is proportionate, that it is done in a way that is sensitive, that allegations, if they are made, or information that comes to the Gardaí or the authorities, that is examined, and that only in cases where there is a serious and immediate threat or risk to the safety or the health of a child, that a child is removed from the family situation, and that other options are clearly explored. In relation to the reports that both Minister Shatter and Minister Fitzgerald have requested, I mean, these are reports in the first instance now from the Garda Commissioner in respect of the handling of the situation by the Gardaí, in respect of the HSE, the report from Minister Fitzgerald in respect of the handling by the HSE and child protection workers of the situation. The intention is that those two reports will go to the Children's Ombudsman and I think we should then see what are her recommendations as to what further steps might need to be taken at that stage. But I think the first thing that we need to do is to establish what happened here, get the initial reports, and then the Children's Ombudsman, who is independent and in whom I have enormous confidence, and I'm sure members of the House have enormous confidence, will hear what her recommendations are.
Thank you. Deputy McDonald.
Well, Tánaiste, it's not so much, although it is true to say that there was a culture in this state and beyond of non-reporting of abuse of children, very often in the family home, the most common place for abuse of a child to happen. But this state has a much deeper legacy and a much deeper failure in respect of children, and it's the institutional abuse and failure of children, the failure of the state to protect, but also a history and a legacy of the state confiscating children. That's part now of the psychological landscape of how a lot of people view this state and its incapacity to protect our children. And I think we have to acknowledge that. Not play up to it, but acknowledge it. Because it's against that backdrop that people, very many people, judge this turn of events. They see on the one hand a hands-off approach for so many children that are genuinely in serious risk and crisis. And then they see this turn of events in Tallaght and Athlone, and these children arbitrarily taken from their homes. I welcome very much your statement, your emphatic statement of equality of treatment for every child and every family. But that has to be made real. That has to be real in the practice as well as the rhetoric. And I want to put to you again, it is not appropriate and it will not build public confidence for the Gardaí to investigate the Gardaí and for the HSE to investigate the HSE. Why not just in the first instance give this investigative process to the Ombudsman, to Ombudsman Emily Logan, and allow her independent office charged with the rights and welfare of children to proceed and bring this inquiry from start to finish?
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, I think that, again, I think we need to reflect on what's important here. What's important here is, first of all, the safety of children. I think we're all agreed that the kind of practices and the kind of neglect that was part of our history in respect of dealing with children, that needs to be put behind us, and it is being put behind us. And that the safety and welfare of children is put at the heart of the entire child protection system. But clearly, in the way in which that is operated, it has to be done in a way that is accountable. And I think that, I think there are many people this morning who I think have very basic questions to ask about what happened here. How does the Gardaí arrive at a home and remove a child from that home in circumstances where, as we now know, there doesn't appear to have been any basis for that? How did that happen? What was the report? What was the information the Gardaí had that led them to go to the house in the first place?
Thank you.
Well, let's try and establish. I think we do need. I mean, these are the things. These are the things that we need to establish. These are the facts that we need to find out here. The questions that we need to have answered. What happened in the house? How was the decision made?
Thank you.
What was the risk? What was the danger? Who made the decision? And I think in the first instance now we get the reports from the Garda Commissioner and from the HSE. Place that in the hands of the Children's Ombudsman. Let's see then what the report from the Children's Ombudsman is, and there may well be issues that we then have to return to address at that stage. But let's, in the first instance now, hear what are the actual facts of what happened here, get the basic questions answered, and hear what the independent Children's Ombudsman has to say about it.
Thank you. Did I say that this matter will be discussed further on topical issues later in the day? Deputy Donnelly.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle.
Sorry, Deputy Donnelly.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Tánaiste, I'm going to ask you about the European Stability Mechanism. But I just wanted to say, in follow-up to Deputy McDonald, I applaud your passion for equality and for non-discrimination. It's obviously very real. However, it's a bit hard to take when tomorrow you're going to vote through a piece of legislation that discriminates on no other ground other than age. Maybe that's something to reflect on. Tánaiste, the EU leaders are meeting today and tomorrow in Brussels, and it's pretty clear that one of the issues that will be discussed is the retrospective recapitalisation of banks using the European Stability Mechanism. Now, for Ireland, this is critical. As everyone in this House knows, we poured about €64 billion into the failed banking system in Ireland. The latest information from the budgetary document suggests that next year we'll pay about €2.7 billion in interest on the money that we all poured into the banks. €2.7 billion. Now, let's put that in perspective. The entire gain to the Exchequer of all of the measures from the social welfare bill, which will come through tomorrow, including cuts to the under-26s, will be about €100 million. So let's think about this for a second. The social welfare bill coming in tomorrow will return to the Exchequer about 1/27th of the money that we will pay in interest, not on the national debt, but just the bit of the national debt that is there because of the banking crisis. And the youth who are going to be discriminated against tomorrow in this bill will pay that €2.7 billion in their taxes for the rest of their lives, unless Ireland can get a substantial deal on recapitalisation of the Irish banks. And I am glad and I welcome the Taoiseach's writing to his counterparts to keep this imperative front and centre. However, Tánaiste, both Labour and Fine Gael made a lot of noise before the election about senior bondholders sharing the burden. However, when you came into government and Angela Merkel said no, the government acquiesced, and tens of billions have been paid out since. In fact, we don't even know how much burden sharing was asked for.
You're over time.
So this is my question. Thank you, Ceann.
Thank you.
My question has two parts, Tánaiste. The first is, can you tell the House how much recapitalisation has been asked for? How many billions or tens of billions has been asked for? And if Angela Merkel continues to say no, and she is clearly publicly saying no right now, is there a plan B?
Sorry, will you stay quiet,
Is there a plan B?
Sorry, will you put your question? Thank you. Will you mind your own business just for a moment? Thank you. Thank you. Would you please put your question, Deputy? Thank you.
I'm trying, Ceann.
Yeah.
Tánaiste, there's two parts to the question. First of all, to what extent is the government asking for recapitalisation?
Would you stay quiet,
How much?
please?
And secondly, if Angela Merkel and other European states say no, does the government have a plan B, or is the intention to continue making the payments? Thank you.
Thank you. Honestly, there are no clocks in operation for leaders' questions. That's the answer to it. And don't interrupt somebody in the middle of their question. Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, as the
Sorry, Tánaiste, please. Thank you.
As the deputy is aware, when this government took office at the beginning of 2011, we inherited an unholy mess of bank guarantee, huge problems in the banks, and we've had to work to get us out of that situation. And we have, over that period of time, first of all, managed our affairs in such a way that we will now exit the bailout at the end of this year. Secondly, we succeeded in negotiating the terms of the deal that was made by the previous government. In the first instance, to secure a reduction in the interest rate. And I remember people in this House thinking we wouldn't get a 1% reduction, and we got over 2%. Secondly, we succeeded in negotiating the end of the promissory note payment and the liquidation of Anglo-Irish Bank, or the IBRC as it had become. Thirdly, we succeeded in persuading our European partners to make a decision in June of 2012, a significant policy decision on the separation of bank and sovereign debt. And in that decision, to specifically reference the situation of Ireland, because, of course, Ireland had done its recapitalisation before the new European mechanisms, including the ideas around banking union and the ESM, were being put in place. Following on from that, we have then pressed ahead with the implementation of banking union, and indeed quite an amount of work on that during the course of the Irish presidency. The issue will be discussed at the European Council again tomorrow. And in order to make it absolutely clear as to what Ireland's position is, the Taoiseach has written to President Van Rompuy and to the heads of state and government of the other member states, making it clear that we want delivery on the June 2012 agreement. In all of the previous negotiations which we have successfully conducted and concluded to the benefit of the Irish taxpayer, we have done so on the basis that we would not state publicly our negotiating position. I think that would be very unwise. We're not going to do so on this situation either, other than to say that we are determined to get the best outcome for the Irish taxpayer, and we have some form on this because we have succeeded on all of the previous occasions when we had major negotiations to conduct in getting a satisfactory outcome for the Irish taxpayer, and indeed an outcome, I think, which went beyond the most pessimistic expectations that were often expressed in this House.
Thank you. Deputy Donnelly, 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your reply, Tánaiste. Just to set the record straight, the interest rate was achieved by Portugal and then applied to Ireland. When you looked for an interest rate reduction, you didn't get one. Secondly, you made an extraordinary comment, which is that you've ended the pro-note payment. Now, unless I am mistaken, we're going to pay $210 million next year in interest on the pro-note, and we still owe $28 billion in pro-note bonds. So just so that everybody understands, the pro-note payment has not changed. It's moved from a promissory note to a bond. We still owe the money, and we're still going to pay all of the money. You are right in that you achieved a fantastic success last year in June with that statement, and I applaud you for it. And my question goes to the heart of that statement, because being nice and paying everybody else's bills is not a strategy. It's what has happened on the pro-notes. If you want to use public money to pay my mortgage, I'll tell everyone in Europe you're fantastic as well. But the question is very, very important, because on the bondholders we got no movement. And my question is this, my question is this. My question is this. How much recapitalisation has the government asked for? And I'm not asking you what Plan B is, I accept that. I'm asking you if you have a Plan B other than paying if Angela Merkel says no. Thank you.
Thank you. Tánaiste.
Well, first of all, Deputy Donnelly, you've been wrong successively in your predictions as to what would happen. You didn't think we would exit the bailout. You now say it doesn't. You now say it doesn't matter. You didn't think. You didn't think we would get the reduction in the interest rate. You didn't think we would get a conclusion to the promissory note issue. And now you now seem to be wishing that we fail again in relation to the issue of the recapitalisation.
Would you allow the reply?
Thanks. It is time.
Sorry, would you please?
Donnelly, when it comes to sanctimonious, you have no equivalent.
Deputy Donnelly, would you please allow a reply to your question?
You asked the question. You asked the question, do we have a Plan B? We have a Plan B, a Plan C, a Plan D. We are well prepared. We are well prepared, as we were in the previous occasions when we were successful to conclude these negotiations. We will do so. Very often these are matters of timing. We will do so when we will be in the best position to secure the best outcome for the Irish taxpayer. That's what I think the taxpayer expects us to do. We have set out our position in relation to the European Council meeting today. That's been set out in the letter from the Taoiseach. The issue of recapitalisation, doesn't arise until the banking union and the ESM structures are put in place. That will be into next year. But clearly it wouldn't be wise that we simply wait until next year to set out our position, to ensure that the Irish position is clearly understood, and we'll continue that over the period of time until we get a satisfactory outcome, as we have done on each of the previous occasions.
Thank you. That completes Leaders' Questions.